You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This episode is sponsored by StudentAccess. StudentAccess, the leader in Trio software. StudentAccess is an online database solution that allows Trio programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former Trio staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with Trio. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, listener, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Trio. This is Season 6, Episode 19. I am your host, Juan Rivas. In today's episode, we have Celestina Munoz-Bryant, Trio SSS Director at the University of Southern Indiana. Celestina is on the podcast to share her Trio journey from being a participant to Trio Director. So coming up in just a bit, Celestina Munoz-Bryant. A heartfelt thanks to our individual supporters, Angelica Vialpando, Rosario Riley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Jeff Nepute, Angelica Valdez, Felicia Rivera, Eric LaMaster, and Jaded Electronics. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, TrioJoblist.com, NOSOTROS Education Center, TheTrioStore.com, powered by Proforma. Visit www.thetriostore.com, your source for Trio graduation stoles. And StudentAccess. Thank you so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You can support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. If you own a business and would like to run an ad on our podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast business PayPal account. Our handle is @letstalktrio. Your support helps lift Trio voices. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, or alumni to be on the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a great episode featuring Celestina Munoz-Bryant, Trio Student Support Services Director at the University of Southern Indiana. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode.
Hi, Trio Nation. My guest on the Let's Talk Trio podcast is an alum of the Trio and currently serves as the director for the Trio Student Support Services program at the University of Southern Indiana. She earned her associates from South Mountain Community College in Phoenix, her bachelor's in interdisciplinary studies, communication and leadership ethics from Arizona State University, and her master's in higher education from ASU as well. In her free time, my guest enjoys hiking, dancing, bonfire get-togethers, that sounds like fun, motorcycle riding, and advocating for access to higher education for underrepresented student populations. Welcome to the podcast, Celestina Munoz-Bryant. Celestina, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Juan. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. As you said, graduate from Arizona State, home from Phoenix, Arizona. I am now living in the Kentucky, Southern Indiana area. So there's been some exciting changes in my life, but I am glad to make it from student participant to now serving as a director in the Trio program.
Your story sounds amazing, and just the brief time that I've gotten to know you over LinkedIn and now virtually, I know you have a wonderful journey to share with us. Can you tell us, first of all, thank you for giving us a little bit of time of your day today to talk about your Trio journey, which is, I'm sure, like I said, it's going to sound amazing.
Hopefully.
So first off, you, as you were sharing in the pre-show, you kind of live in Kentucky,
Yeah.
but you commute to Indiana.
Yep.
That must be a whole
It's weird.
thing.
It is.
Yeah,
So,
talk to me about
for
that.
somebody from a big state like Arizona, where you can drive for 6 hours and potentially at least getting to a state line, but still be within the state. It's been an adjustment period. So I live in Western Kentucky, kind of northwestern. So then I commute. My commute is about an hour, which is typical even for like somebody who's lived in the city. You know, I've commuted an hour before for work.
Sure.
It's just I've never commuted an hour and changed states. So that's been interesting. Luckily, we are in the same time zone.
Oh,
because
good.
I do have
Good.
colleagues. Fun fact, if you didn't know, Indiana has about like 2 or 3 time zones within the same state. Like if you go to
No way.
Indianapolis, they're like 2 hours ahead of me. So, and
Wow.
I'm still in Indiana when I'm at work. So
Mhm.
everybody's always getting confused about which time are we talking about? Are we talking Eastern time, Central time,
Right,
all
right.
that stuff? And then of course, obviously somebody from Arizona where there is no daylight savings time, that has been an adjustment just to change your time, your clock and things like that. So luckily the phone
Absolutely.
does it for me. But obviously like the microwave and the stove, they're not that tech savvy. So, you know, just remembering to change those has been fun. But yeah, no, it's been an interesting journey. A lot of people always ask me like, well, what brought you to Kentucky? Or how did you end up changing locations from Arizona? And luckily it's as easy peasy as a love story between me and my now husband. So some blonde hair, blue eyed firefighter stole my heart, and
Aw.
he came with 3 little ones. Well, they're all teenagers now, so they all have sass. But but luckily I moved. It was easy for me to move out here. It was easier for me to move out versus him. And the irony though is I was actually considering at the time, I was still considering leaving Arizona. I was just ready for a new adventure. I've always kind of been that kid when it came to 4 daughters that my parents have. I was always the one that was willing to go everywhere. And so I was actually considering applying to either Notre Dame or somewhere in Tennessee. So either Indiana or Tennessee. So I'm in the realm where I was looking for anyway. I just so happened to land in Kentucky with my now husband.
Wow, that's amazing. So has it been, you were talking a little bit about the change between Arizona and now Kentucky, Indiana. Has it been a culture shock? Is it very different out there?
It is. In some ways, they're similar. Well, I think it's similar in my Latinx community where luckily being in a small town, we all like to get together. We know each other. We know our neighbors, which is not like the city. You know, a lot of people, you know, you don't say good morning to everybody. You know, if you walked into a Starbucks and were like, good morning, you know, people might look at you a little funny back home. But here in Kentucky and definitely in Southern Indiana, everybody's very friendly, very open-minded, that kind of stuff. I would say a big culture shock I have, and this is again probably more on my Latinx side than it is necessarily Arizona, is birthdays. Like here, they're 2-3 hours tops. You know, you come, you eat your hot dog or pizza, the cake, the kid opens their presents, and then the party's over.
Yeah, there's a
Versus
formula
my
to it.
Latinx community, my Hispanic, Mexican American community, that might be a 2-3 day party depending on the birthday.
That's so true.
Yes, like I'm used to getting mariachis for a 1-year-old, you know, so that's been a little bit of a culture shock. I'm definitely getting used to it now, you know, but it's just something I miss from back home is that long-term camaraderie for special occasions and things like that. I think another one, again, would be the saying hello to everybody, and, you know, everybody's really welcoming here. I was a little concerned moving out to the South, technically, because Kentucky is still considered the South, being of Latinx community and being Mexican American. But honestly, I think I just lucked out. My community is really, really nice here. They've welcomed me with open arms. And again, due to my husband, he's actually a first responder. He's a retired firefighter. So he's still on the volunteer side. And then now he works with a construction company. But either way, between hanging out with a bunch of first responders, whether it's EMS, firefighters, police, etc., I think they've all just kind of welcomed me with open arms. And that's been a great new community that I've developed here in Western Kentucky and Southern Indiana.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Can you talk about some of these interests and hobbies that we were talking about earlier as you was doing your introduction? Because you're into hiking, you're dancing, you love the bonfire get-togethers, all of that. Talk to us. How did you get into that, or what drew you in?
Okay, well, hiking, I was initially not a hiker. So I am unfortunately like a divorce. I had a previous marriage. So after that divorce, one of my best friends from back home, he actually worked for Disability Resource Services at Arizona State, and he was really into hiking. And so he was like, "Come on, you're not gonna stay at home. You're not gonna cry. You're not gonna, you're gonna get your butt up. We're gonna go for a hike." And then that's
Hmm.
how I slowly but surely got into it. It's been a challenge here because Kentucky is more known for the hills of Kentucky,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's not a huge hiking like as far as mountains or anything like that. I do got to go to Indiana for those kinds of hikes, or down to Tennessee. But luckily, those are only like an hour or two away. So that's the beauty of being in what we call the tri-state area. And so that's how I got into hiking. Dancing, I mean, I'm Mexican American. It's in my blood. I've
It
probably been
comes, yes,
dancing
comes with the
cumbia since I
territory.
was 5. So, on my sisters or my older sisters or my dad's shoes, and I just, I love, especially my Latin ex community, whether it's salsa, merengue,
I gotta
and
put you on the
bachata.
spot. Is there
Yeah.
a particular style you like to dance to?
Cumbias are my
Okay,
favorite. Yeah, but I think that was
got it,
obviously
got it.
born and raised with cumbias, me with Mexican American. But yep. And then the bonfires, that's a new thing because of course in Arizona we're constantly like in a heat wave or no fire
I
zone.
was just about to say
So
Arizona's not really known for
no,
bonfires.
that's definitely a Kentucky, Indiana part of me where we're like able to have bonfires and not have to worry about, putting the state in danger. And without going too much backtrack, with another culture shock is the greenery around here and actually having like
Mm.
4 seasons. So the leaves change in the fall, a lot of rain in the spring. A funny story, one year, my first year that I was here, which was 4 years ago, I guess I kind of got some seasonal depression. So like I was calling my mom and I was like, I don't like it. All this rain all the time. I miss the sun. And those Mexican American moms sometimes she gave me that hard truth. She was like, Mija, you asked for 4 seasons. What did you
Mm.
think you were gonna get? I was like, okay, fair enough. All right.
You went for
So
April
I left
showers,
it
you're
at that.
getting
Needless
April
to say, I don't
showers.
call mom anymore when it's raining. She hit me with that hard truth.
Really?
But no, yeah, the bonfire. So like a thing my husband and I like to do, which is part of the other thing that I do, which is motorcycle riding. We're part of a nonprofit, which is specifically for firefighters that are motorcycle enthusiasts, and we raise money for um, pediatric burn survivors and their families.
Oh,
So we
that's
try to
awesome.
help with things that insurance doesn't cover, whether that's sending them to burn camp or if they need plastic surgery or something like that. And so I joined that through him. And so that's how motorcycle stuff. So my motorcycle family and I usually like every other weekend, especially now, it'll probably start this upcoming weekend now that it's cooler down here because we're already in like 50 degrees over here. I know back home in Arizona
Oh
is like
wow.
109 today. So we're definitely in our 50s and 60s time here in Kentucky and Indiana. And so the bonfires will start and everybody brings the kiddos. It's definitely family oriented. So it's a time for me to kind of get back into my Latinx traditions of having family over during the weekend and things like that. So, and of course, who doesn't like a good s'more? Like
Oh,
especially now thanks
absolutely.
to TikTok, I'm learning how to do all kinds of s'mores, like with
Different
strawberries
recipes. Yeah.
and
Oh my
with
gosh, strawberries.
yeah, yeah. You dip it in the marshmallow fluff and then
Uh-huh.
you burn it or put it in the fire and then you
No
put the
way.
graham crackers and it's like a strawberry filled s'more. And I was like,
What? I'm gonna have to try
look. So
that.
we're always trying different recipes and things like that. So it's really fun.
That's wonderful. So, being in this new town, what would you say its best quality?
Best quality is the neighborly, like the I'm here for you kind of neighbors. Like literally, when we were first renovating our house, we had our neighbors, we had friends come in and they like helped us renovate. Like I don't recommend doing flooring on your own. That was a lesson learned and try to save pinch a penny. Those knees were hurting for weeks.
Oh my gosh.
But I mean, I loved the painting and all that process,
Hmm.
but just knowing that like our neighbors cared enough to like offer a hand and things like that. And again, they're just so welcoming. Like when we first moved here, and they learned that I was Mexican American. So then of course they questioned me like, oh, well, have you had the Mexican food here? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, is it authentic? And I'm like, kind of. So of course, and then they're super
Yeah.
excited to get to try my food. And so I've been kind of in a positive way, pressured to cook more authentic food. And so,
You're
and they love
bringing,
trying
yeah,
it. And
yeah.
so it's been
You're
fun.
you're absolutely bringing that authenticity of Mexican culture to the community, which is always awesome.
Yeah.
I live in Colorado, so like
Oh, I'm
we're
jealous.
lacking Northern Colorado. I'm gonna be full out to say it. We're lacking in authentic Mexican food. So I'll just
Yes. Hey, but I don't blame the restaurants. You got to cater to
no,
your clientele. So if they want
absolutely,
queso
absolutely.
instead of real enchilada sauce, that's okay.
It's all right.
So
It's all right.
it's all good.
So without spoiling too much, I want to
Mhm.
just like what do you enjoy most about working at the University of Southern Indiana? And I know we're gonna get to your journey on how you got there, but what do you like
Right.
most about USI?
USI, I think, embarks the act, and it's in our mission statement. Now, don't ask me to quote our mission statement. I should have
Oh,
wrote it
I'm
down.
not gonna do
But
it.
what I know we're definitely an institution that cares, and the reason I know that, and I wish it was like on a billboard. I know a lot of us keep saying we used to say the Goldilocks campus, but now a new trend that we're all kind of saying is thanks to our Vice President of Strategic Enrollment Management, VP Miller. He likes to say that we are big enough to matter, but small enough to care. And I think we
Oh, that's
definitely embark
awesome.
on that. So while USI is doing research, just like big R1 institutions, even though we're not one, we're a D1 in basketball. So we're making waves, we're making moves and doing a lot within the higher education system. And we have a lot, and our students are doing amazing things every day. But I think what's the beauty about USI is that we care. Like we're small enough. We're not too small like a liberal arts college. We're still a big university, but I think we're just that right size to care enough to where like our dean of students knows plenty of students by name and their major, and that's doable at our campus, you know. So I get to know our 140 TRIO participants. But I've even got to know students outside of TRIO, whether it's through our partnerships with other departments. And you know, they're constantly just, you know, if they see me walking on campus, the students are engaging, they'll definitely say good morning. Of course, I'm the one saying good morning at 8 a.m. when they're trying to get their Starbucks on their way to a math class that they didn't sign up for, supposedly.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like everybody's just super engaging and we care. We even have what's called a care report. It's where any faculty, staff, or professional, you know, leadership can report to the dean of students like, hey, I just think somebody should touch base with this student, and we call it a care report. And then literally the follow-up is almost instantaneous. Like we're almost better than Amazon Prime. So that's how much
Oh wow, that's
intact.
good. That's really good.
Yeah, exactly. So it's almost immediate. I mean, if not immediate, definitely with 24 to 48 hours, that student is getting a touch base, whether it's through our dean of students office. If it's one of my TRIO students, I get notified, and again, so on and so forth with all our specialty programs with like multicultural center pathways and such. And so, but that's what I really, really enjoy about USI is that we care and that we embark that in our everyday today kind of abilities.
That's wonderful. So this
Yeah.
is the part of my favorite part of the podcast where we start
Yeah.
your reflection journey and we talk about like who you are. So we're going to rewind the clock a bit. Can you talk about
Okay.
your childhood and what was that like?
Childhood was interesting. So I'm one of four. My dad had four daughters. So how he ever lived in a house with five women, you'll have to ask him, because I did not embark in that skill. I always tell him that's a gateway to heaven card. So, 'cause I love my sisters, but you get all of us in the same room, and it's a little rough.
Oh my gosh,
And
I'm
the
sorry.
interesting fact about me is that there is a 16, 17, and 18-year gap between me and the oldest. So I was
Oh
definitely what I
wow.
call the whoops baby. My parents had me when they were 42. My mom hates it, and when she hears it, she's gonna be so annoyed with me that I put this on air. But so I'm the youngest, and so while I was raised as technically, yes, the baby, I actually
Mhm.
identify more with like a firstborn because I was by
Really?
myself.
Okay,
Because
I can see
again, they
that.
were all like 16, 17, 18 years old. They were their teens getting ready to leave the house by the time
Right.
Tina was born. And
Mm.
so, and then I'm that awkward age to where my sisters started having my nieces and nephews. So I was too old to hang out with the second generation, but I'm too young to hang out with the older generation, the first generation. So
Mm.
it's been an interesting combination of both. And then on top of that, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's very early on. Luckily, we caught
Oh,
it
I'm sorry to
early.
hear,
So
yeah.
he was diagnosed at 51. So again, when they had me at 42, you're talking about 11, 12 years old, my dad already is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so we moved my dad back to his hometown in Mexico because his doctor had recommended that he stay in a more slow pace environment versus the city, which is go, go, go. I mean,
sure.
you know, even back then, Phoenix was already a developing city. It was becoming what it is now and just constantly in go mode. And so the doctor didn't recommend that. So my third grade year, my parents would go back and forth. And while I have no recollection of it, my mom tells me that I basically started to develop abandonment issues because I couldn't, obviously, as a third grader, you don't understand why mom comes into your life for like a week and then is gone for a month, or may stay for 2 weeks and then be gone for a month because she was trying to take care of my dad. And so fourth grade came and mom was like, I guess you're moving to Mexico with me and your dad. So fourth through seventh grade, I actually lived in Mexico, a town called Janos, Chihuahua, and it's just south of Arizona. And at that time, the population was probably 1,200. I think now it's up to 10, so it's growing. But at the time, it's a very, very small town. So when people compare it to where I live now, they're like, how do you go from Phoenix to Western Kentucky and it's such a small town? I've already had this experience growing up. So it was kind of almost like going back to some home roots of being raised in Mexico, meaning everybody knew everybody. Tina can't get away with nothing. Like my dad knew my first ever boyfriend happened and he knew he was coming to ask for permission before I knew he was going to ask for permission to date me. So that kind of small town. So, so that's how I actually became bilingual. So I learned from, you know, our motherland. The teachers only let my mom go to class with me for like 2 days. And then after that, they're like, she's got to learn. So I learned Spanish within like a ridiculous time, like 2-3 months. My mom said I was fluent, but I had no choice, you know. So back there, you know, literally none of my teachers spoke English. None of the administration spoke English. My family was one of 3 in the whole town that were bilingual. So my mom actually was the English teacher there for a while too. So so I got to, that's probably how I ended up in education, although that we'll get into that here in a little bit. But that's, so then when I came back to the United States, my mom was like, hey, I want you to go to college. I want you to get your degrees from the United States. I don't like Mexico's. She didn't like the high school program either in Mexico. So she was like, I'm sending your butt back to the United States, but she didn't want the culture shock to be so grand that it would, you know, freak me out, I guess. So she actually moved me back to the United States for 8th grade. And I can't remember the name of my institution. I know now it's ASU Prep. It's in downtown Phoenix. And they were the only school that would accept me because they had 3 levels of 8th grade: 8th grade 1, which was your honors; 8th grade 2, which was your average student; and 8th grade 3, which were for your ESL and or students with disabilities. So so they took my grades from Mexico, and then of course they put me in 8th grade 3 because they assumed like I didn't know English and, you know, all those kind of things that come with living in a border state. And so within 3 weeks, they were calling my mom wanting me to switch to honors. And I was like, no. Yeah, my mom was like, do you want to change to honors? And I was like, no, I've already made my friends. I like my teachers. And of course, they're looking at my mom like, why are you asking her? And she's like, well, she's going to class, not me. So my mom has definitely been a big advocate for me for my education. So, and I ended up actually being valedictorian, which I didn't even know was a thing for 8th grade until I got here. And since I was bilingual, they made me do my speech in English and Spanish. So instead of just doing like a 2 or 3 minute speech, I was up there for like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, Lord.
I can only imagine the pressure you were feeling to interpret for both or translate for both.
Oh, yes. And then fast forward to high school, typical high school, just, you know, did all my 4 years of English, 4 years of math. I was definitely that student that panicked if she got anything less than a B. So senior year came, let's fast forward to senior year, and I was in pre-calculus. And because I was determined I was going to go straight to the university, and I was pre-med at the time. I thought I was going to be a pediatrician. And me and pre-calc did not get along, no matter how many tutoring hours, lunch hours I dedicated. It just did not. So that was my first one and only D. And I think he gave me that out of pure, I don't even know what to call it. Just, you know, he felt sorry for me because Tina bombed everything. Like, I mean, I did my homework assignments, you know, I went to class, but technically his grades were based off of tests, and I bombed every one of them. So,
Oh,
so it was my one and only D, and I think that was kind of like my unofficial first time where I realized it's not sometimes what you learn, or it's not always about winning. It's not always about doing well. It's about learning to just do your best and being
absolutely.
okay with that.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was yeah, K through 12. That was my
Wow.
experience.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. NOSOTROS Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, development of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. Nosotros Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotros.edu.org. Again, that's nosotrosedu.org.
And now, back to the podcast.
Can you talk about your family? What
Yeah.
was something that, how would you describe them? And what would you like to share with the audience about your family?
Well, again, typical Mexican American family. So my dad was born in Mexico, again, that town of Janos, Chihuahua.
Mhm.
Came here illegally, couldn't tell you when. I always just say when dinosaurs still roamed around. So, and my mom, well, she's a US citizen, and so is my dad now. He's been naturalized, but at the time he
wonderful.
wasn't when he met my
Congratulations.
mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was here illegally for quite some time. He crossed the border like when he was 12, and he didn't get naturalized till he was like 27-ish. And so when he met my mom, which was in Superior, Arizona, it's a copper mining town in Arizona. And my mom was helping teach English and stuff to some of the workers, and that's where she met my dad. And so again, obviously now working in education, I give my mom grief. I'm like, you're not supposed to date your students. And she's like, well, he wasn't mine. But that's how they met.
Oh, cool.
So while my sisters and I, again with that age gap, my dad, because he was learning English and he was dedicated to learning the language because he didn't want to be taken advantage of, none of my sisters are bilingual except for me because my dad was practicing English in the household. So even though he still has a very heavy accent, my dad is fluent in English and Spanish. And so when I came along, that's why they were kind of adamant about me learning Spanish. They're like, at least one of you has to learn. So that burden, I guess you could say, kind of fell on me. Although to this day, I'm very thankful for that. Not that anybody who doesn't speak Spanish, I'm not one of those people who thinks you're less than Latinx or Latine. If you don't speak Spanish, I just like it because I think it does at least help me be a little bit more tied to my culture. And then I grew up, again, when I was in Mexico, I grew up with Mexican traditions. Like even to this day, I celebrate 15th and 16th of September for Mexican Independence Day. I celebrate Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, all those things that are traditionally hosted in Mexico, but not in the United States. Now, I know recently some things are starting to trend thanks to Disney, like Coco. A lot of US citizens or Mexican Americans are celebrating Day of the Dead, but I've been celebrating it since I can remember. So my dad's always worked blue collar jobs. He has a second grade education, but the man could have been an engineer or something because he's fabulous at math. He likes to build things. My mom she went to Northern Arizona University for like a semester. But then that was it. So my mom, oddly enough, while my mom went to college and didn't finish, my dad has always been my biggest supporter of education, and I'll save that for another question. And then my sisters, they're all, Mexican American. They've had husbands and so forth. And I have my nieces and nephews, thanks to them. I think we've all been very close knit. I've been the oddball to move away. And it's been a challenge for both of us, for me and them. But overall, we all had quinceañeras and we all, got together over the weekend as we grew older, and everybody goes to Abuela's house, which is my mom's house. Now, granted, my parents now have moved back to Mexico permanently. And so some holidays we will spend in Mexico. So to kind of not have my parents travel so much, but we have a ranch down in Mexico that my dad built from the ground up. It was his vision, his goal, his dream. And, one adobe at a time. Took us 10 years to create his dream home, and it's there. And now that's our kind of vacation home. And I think that's where we started to learn more about not necessarily generational wealth, but that generational heirlooms and things like that. Like, I don't think that was instilled in my dad beforehand. Like, my grandparents, just because they were so poor, there was nothing to leave anybody. And same thing with my mom's family. They lived check to check and they just went to work. There was no such thing as retirement plans or 401ks or, anything to leave the family or the children. And I think my dad, without getting too religious, is done right by the good book, which he's left something for his children's children. And so, my nieces and nephews have memories in that house in Mexico and all that stuff too. And so now that's our home. Should anybody need it, you ever have a place that, you just need to call home, that's where you go.
That's wonderful. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. How would your family describe you?
Ooh. I think that they would describe me as ambitious. I've always been the go-getter. I'm definitely a representative of the underdog. So anytime somebody told me no, I would like to prove them wrong. And then I think I'm very conservative, and not the political conservative, but like I never wore like short dresses or anything, or I didn't wear high heels for the longest time. So my sisters always tease me with I love pearls. So Tina and her pearls. And so, so I always said I was born in the wrong era. That's another thing that they would probably describe me as, is born in the wrong era. I love the 50s. Now, granted, I don't like a lot of politics of the 50s.
Oh, sure.
But as far as the wardrobe and the style and those kinds of things, I do like. I like low rider cars and those kinds of things. So I think that, and then definitely a passion for learning. I think the only time I would lie, and I will stand by this because, of course, my mom always asks me if I ever snuck out or anything. I'm like, no, Mom, you don't get honor society by sneaking out of the house. Like, she asked me that on my wedding day. Like, yeah, did you ever sneak out and go do something crazy? And I'm like, no, I was a good child.
Right.
But yeah, but I think I really was only because, again, my parents were 42. So that level of parenting was already there. Like, they weren't figuring it out. They already knew what to do by the time they had me. So there was no playing. And I don't know how, I don't know if it's a Latina thing or just my parents' thing from having me being older parents, but somehow they instilled me this fear of letting them down. Like, I never wanted to, or being a failure. Like, I never wanted to hear that. That has been my biggest fear to this day, is if I'd never ever heard my dad say how you let me down, or I'm disappointed in you. That'd be worse than dying. So
I hear that.
yeah, but overall, but the times I did lie, because I did, but it was for good reason, and I'll stand by it, which is for go to school. Like, my sisters would be like, oh, it's a half day, you don't have to go to school. So I would lie and be like, well, my teacher has a test and we can't make it up if we don't go to the half day.
No.
So again, I used to panic. I was like, anything less than a B. I was like, no, I can't have anything less than a B. I gotta get into med school. So Tina would lie to go to class.
Okay, I get. Okay, that sounds.
So Another good word, which I wear with pride, is a nerd. Definitely wear the glasses sometimes. I do have contacts now, but I was always the nerd of the family. I liked learning, and I like learning new things and learning about people. And so they would definitely call me a nerd.
I feel like you
In a
really
positive
personify
way.
the older sibling a mantra. So I'm the firstborn in my family, and would definitely be
Okay.
they would describe me as a nerd and very bookish.
Okay.
So I totally understand where you're coming from.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you've already said mom and dad place very high value to education for you. They really valued
Mhm.
education. Where did that come from? Why do they value education so much?
I think for us being a first generation low income student was because that to them was the way out of poverty. That was the way out of being check to check. That was the way to, luckily I didn't have those parents that put so much pressure that they made me like their retirement plan or anything. Like my parents are fine. They do well on their own.
Hmm.
I still give to them because that's again with my upbringing. I feel like as a daughter I should help my parents now that I am in a
Hmm.
capable place to help them. They've helped me for so long.
Hmm.
Um but I remember my dad, and that's what I was saving this quote for. My dad always told me, I'll say it in Spanish and then I'll translate it, which is: es más
Sure.
fácil levantar un lápiz todos los días que una pala, which is it's easier to pick up a pencil every day instead of a shovel. Because again, he comes from that blue collar, breaking his back, his knees, his hands. I mean, you shake that man's hands and it's like touching leather because there's so much callus on them. And
Mm-hmm.
so he just really instilled that in me, like, Mija, it'll be easier for you to go to work every day if you love what you do and you use your brain. Like, don't use your back, don't use your hands, like, just really go to school. Because again, he only has a second grade education.
Hmm.
And again, but somehow the man is fantastic at math. So, of course, when I struggled with math, I went to dad.
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
so I wish I actually got that mathematical gene that he has because I did not. Definitely struggled, but excuse me, I think that's why. And then my mom, again, she at least went to college for a semester.
Hmm.
Now, being a traditional Mexican household, the reason she dropped out was because my grandmother, even though I didn't get to know her, was passing away of cancer. And so my mom became the
Mm.
woman of the house. So she actually put her older two brothers through college and took care
Oh
of her
wow.
dad.
Hmm.
So my mom kind of was stripped of that opportunity due to family obligation. And so I think neither of my parents through that wanted that for any of us. And I think for me, the reason it really stuck versus my sisters, now again, nothing against my sisters, they've all later have gotten degrees and stuff. But I was the first one to get a bachelor's and a master's. But I think the reason it resonated with me so much was because I could see it firsthand. Like, meaning,
Mm-hmm.
since my parents were so much older, they should be at air quote retirement age, and yet they still had to work because if not, we wouldn't have money coming into the house. And so that's when I started kind of unofficially thinking of, oh, generational wealth or financial literacy. Like, granted, I didn't know those words at the time, but somehow in my
Hmm.
mind, it was just coming to fruition. Like, education is going to be the way out too. Like, I started thinking like my parents, I saw, you hear of professors making six figures. You knew that if somebody had a career, not necessarily a job, but a career, that they would make decent amount of money. And so in order to
Right.
have a career, you had to go to college. And so
Hmm.
that was kind of what was explained to me since the get-go, definitely even early stages in high school. And so that's why Tina was like, no, I have to get a B or better, because if not, I'm not going to get what comes with good grades, scholarships, because I knew my family would not be able to afford to send me to school. That was not in their plan in any way, shape, or form to afford to send me anywhere. Now, if I wanted to go, they were supportive, but they definitely leaned on me to figure it out on how to either get it paid for or, how to get help. And so, again, I think it was just their way of making sure that I was more successful than them. Now, granted, I would never belittle my parents or their journey. They put food on the table. I never went without food, never went without electricity or water or anything like that. Now, did I have to sometimes help once I became of age to work? Yes, but it was little things compared to what even some of my other friends went through. And so I'm very, very grateful for my parents instilling me in the fact that how important education was. And then I think now as a staff person, what I've learned is that it may not always bring in money, but it opens more doors. Because I get that question a lot from students of this generation, was it X and Alpha that are entering. And so,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of questioning what's the value of higher ed and their degree. And I think I tell them is it sometimes may not necessarily mean more money, because right now, yes, you can go work at Panda Express, be a general manager and make $60K a year.
Sure.
But then you're probably stuck.
Maxed
That's
out.
all you're going to be able to do.
Yeah.
Versus if you get a degree, you can go be a general manager there. You can go be a general manager somewhere else, because you're going to learn different systems. You can maybe invest in your own company if you get a business degree. You can become an entrepreneur. Like, getting your degree just opens way more doors. As you get a degree, your associates may open 10 doors, versus your bachelor is going to open 20, and so on and so forth. And so that's what I explain to my students now. Now, granted, did Tina know that at the time when Tina was applying for college? No. But I am glad that my parents instilled in me that education was important. But again, I think it's for the lack of opportunity that was given to them, and they figured that it would be an opportunity for me to take advantage of.
Absolutely. So I'm going to reframe this next question, because I feel like we understand what you feel about school. You love school. You love to learn.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to reframe it. What
Mhm.
drove your desire to learn?
I've always just been like a curious cat, I'm always questioning. I like learning about people and their backgrounds. I love learning about, again, now granted, Tina does not like to learn about math. Okay. If anything, well, I only kind of do a little bit now, because now being a parent of teenagers and learning this new math, and I come from a generation where they said math would never change. So now Tina has questions. So
I hear
but
you.
yeah, I just always been intuitive and just kind of question things like why. Like, I was literally like a toddler, even in my teenagers, like why do we do it this way? Why do we, And I was definitely always, again, a big advocate for the underdog. When I came back to the United States, and some of those cultural differences, like in Mexico, when another teacher enters the classroom, you stand and you say good afternoon as a class.
Oh, yeah. I've heard
And
about
we
that.
don't do that here in the United States. I mean, if anything, again, I don't think we value education or our teachers, especially in the K through 12 system, enough. And so when I would question things like, why don't we do that here? Why don't, and I think that just kind of started too with my love for learning, is just asking why, because I would see so many differences having lived in a whole nother country.
Mm-hmm.
And then now being in the United States, and then starting in the United States, because then I started my K through third grade was here in the United States. My first language was English, but then going into a whole new country, learning a whole new language and a way of being, and then coming back and then seeing the difference, and now being able to understand those differences, just kind of made me question life, I guess you could say. I was just always like, why,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but I've
Totally.
always kind of been a curious person.
So let's go into that, about your curiosity. What was the subject that you were most curious about?
In high school, I don't think I had anything that made me really curious. My first class that I think I was ever really passionate about was my intercultural communications class, which I took at my community college. And that professor actually ended up being one of my biggest mentors, Professor Laura Collins. She's since retired from South Mountain Community College. But her class was treated like capstone style, meaning one assignment bled into the next assignment, so on and so forth. So by the end, you had this really grand piece of information. And so your assignment for the semester was to learn about interpersonal communications of a different culture. So I think I did Brazil, which is where I learned the tango was first invented. Like, again, I wouldn't have known that. I would have thought it was Spain. So, and I learned that, different cultures, eye contact is acceptable. Some cultures, it's a form of disrespect. And, the fact that, like Mexican Americans, we like to hug and kiss each other on the cheek. And again, if you go somewhere else, they're going to be looking at you like you're crazy. So
that's weird.
my intercultural communications course was, I think, my first course where I was literally learning for the passion of learning, just because it was really intriguing. And then the second one, oddly enough, is public speaking. I know that's a big fear for most of my students.
I mean, you could say generally a lot of students fear public speaking.
Yeah, it's the third. It's always fluxes in the top
Yeah,
three or top
it's always
five
on top
fears
three.
of
Yeah.
most humans. Yeah. Along with arachnophobia, which is mine. I'd rather give a speech in an auditorium full of people than deal with one little spider. And then of course death. So it fluxes between those three. And but no, what I learned in that course was that it's a spectrum of fear. So some people fear it very little, and then some people fear it a lot, like more than death. And so Tina is on the spectrum and doesn't really fear it at all. Uh, and I think it's because at the end of the day, what usually if I'm giving a speech or something, it's something I'm passionate about. It's something where I
For
really
sure.
want to get a message across. So I have yet to give a speech or an introduction to something that where I'm like, I don't know if I should be doing this because Tina doesn't sign up for stuff like that. So usually it's something I'm passionate about. I've always been that student that was like the ambassadors. They were giving tours to other families or prospective students and those kinds of things. And so public speaking also became a passion of mine.
Oh, very good. So you gave us a little bit of a taste of elementary school and that what was that like for you? But can you walk us through elementary school and what was most memorable to you in elementary?
Memorable would be, especially being in Arizona, was at one point I remember we used to have bilingual courses. Like I
Oh.
still am from that generation that got the last little bit of having both an English teacher and a Spanish teacher in the classroom due to the amount of Spanish speaking students in Arizona. And so I went to, I don't know if it's still there, but it was NFL Yet Academy. And it was a public school. And again, we had two teachers. I have like two or three friends from third grade that I still are in contact with. And I think what made it memorable was just because it was like I felt comfortable. Because I only did that for third grade, that school for third grade. My K through second was at a private Christian not university, private Christian elementary school. And the only reason I went there was because it was close to home. It was in my neighborhood, and my mom ended up getting like a grant or something to allow me to attend there. I think it was obviously now learning the school system due to our socioeconomic status. And so I went to a private school for a little bit, but nobody looked like me. Nobody sounded like me. It was very Caucasian, and my teachers were Caucasian. Very little African American, and I lived in a neighborhood with African Americans. So again, there was nothing that looked familiar in that school. Now, granted, I still had a great time. I learned a lot of things. That's where I took piano lessons. Like again, now you don't hear that in public schools anymore. We did plays and things like that. So it was memorable. But I think what made NFL better was that was where I started to see more of people who I could relate with, moms who had to work, or again, other Mexican Americans where we would take burritos to eat lunch because that's what mom packed, and nobody ever questioned you on why would you bring that to school.
Right.
So yeah, that was kind of K through third, and then middle school is all the way through sixth, right? So then that would make part of Mexico. So that was 4 through 6 is in Mexico. And there, again, it was just culture shock of, we had to wear uniforms, never had to wear uniforms before. They actually would grade us as a class on our hygiene because Mexico was trying to do a big work on personal hygiene, just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to be dirty. And so they would girls weren't allowed to wear nail polish, which is why to this day, some days I don't have nails because it just irks me because that's the way I grew up. We weren't allowed to wear nail polish. They checked our nails, they checked our uniform, they made sure we were dressed properly. And it kind of became a competition. I mean, that's at the end of the day, how we took it as students. We didn't know this whole political side on why we were doing this. I didn't learn that till like way later in life, but we were just like, oh, we got to beat the fifth graders this year. Everybody, tomorrow you better wash your hands and all this stuff. So,
So funny.
and then again, coming from that culture of how much respect comes from being a teacher. Like being a teacher is like being a doctor in Mexico. Like that's the level of respect you get. And so knowing that, and then of course, if you're an administrator, that's even more power and more respect and so on and so forth. And so just seeing that in Mexico, I think also helped me learn, which granted my parents would taught me that anyway, but just to respect authoritative figures and learn that they have something they bring something to the table. Now granted, again, I was the nerd, so I was the teacher's pet and all those things, but I think it ended up helping me in the long run appreciate not only what I do now, but what people did before me. So
Right on. Did you have any particular interests while in elementary, middle school, like band, choir, sports, theater, anything that really just like that drew you in, that you were like, I really like that?
I actually was in band for a little bit. I played the drums in
Oh, wow.
6th and 7th grade. So it was kind of like the military drum where it's just the solo drum. Because it was in Mexico, and I think the thing was bigger than I was, because I was like this little 3 foot. You know how they line you up from shortest to tallest? I was always like 1 or 2. So I was always the little big one. I'm only 5'2" now, so that ought to tell you in junior high how tall I was. And I think the drum was bigger than I was. And it's funny that you bring up that up, or that I'm talking about it, because my dad just went to the parade every school year, the school's parade for Mexican Independence Day. There's a big, huge parade through town, and they didn't have the band. And my dad was like, "Where's the kids band?" And they were like, "Oh, Mr. Rogelio, we don't do that anymore. Like, there's no band program." And he was like, "I remember my daughter, marching up and down these streets tired, and the drum was bigger than she was." He was kind of upset. He was looking for that nostalgic, thing, and he didn't get it. So
Oh, man.
I was
Well,
like,
I'm sorry
"Sorry,
that they
Dad.
did.
Times
Yeah.
change.
Sorry,
It's
Dad.
okay." But he's
So,
just a grumpy old man now. I don't think they
yeah.
paid him any mind. So band, music, I would say, I
Music.
guess in general. Yeah, because I played piano for a little bit, but again, little hands, so hard to do those octaves.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I still liked it, learned it. I haven't played in a long time. I always keep telling myself when I have time, I'm going to take another piano class, because I always learned by ear. I was a musician by ear. I cannot
Oh,
read
wow.
music.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's very
Tina
fascinating.
only cheated a little bit. So in high school, when I did take piano class, I would have my friends play the song we had to learn, and then I would just listen
You
to
would
it over and
oh,
over. And then when it was my
wow.
time to take the exam, which is just our teacher hearing us play it, I could play it.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
nope, never passed the class as far as reading music. And now my stepchildren are in band, and so they read music. So every once in a while, I'm like, okay, what is that note?
I understand. Very understandable. So, at this phase in your life where you transitioned from middle school into high school, did any of those interests carry over into high school for you?
Yep, the piano part did. Band did not. I actually became an athlete in high school. I played tennis all 4 years.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
And the only reason, because she was my English teacher, and she like begged me. So, because she was trying to start a tennis, because it was either that or volleyball. And I also ended up having a scholarship. So in 8th grade, I got a scholarship to go to this particular high school in athletics. Now, granted, it was my home school, but they gave me a golf scholarship. I applied for it, and then there was no golf team in my high school. So the athletic director would like pick any sport. And I liked my English teacher. And again, she was kind of like begging me to join the tennis team. And I was like, not gonna lie. Beg your pardon. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, Mexicans don't play tennis.
That's not our sport.
That's not our sport. But I was like, I mean, I did play soccer, obviously, living in Mexico, but that was like street soccer. I never played it like officially or anything. I was like, I don't know if I want to do soccer either.
Yeah.
So with my teacher begging me to play tennis, I tried out for the tennis team and made it and played all 4 years. Definitely sucked freshman year, like no wins. No, nothing. Even though my games would last almost as long as professional games because I'm left-handed.
Whoa. Oh,
So we're
yeah.
always hitting each other's backhand. So
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
my games would always end up being I'd be the last one off the court. And
Yeah.
sometimes my coach would be proud, and sometimes she was like, "Tina, can you decide whether you're gonna win or lose? And let's go home." But it was inner city school, South Mountain High School, and I played all 4 years. I ended up winning doubles my senior year. We went to state, and I won doubles with my partner. But it was definitely a school where like my coach bought us our uniforms from like Ross. There was no institutional support or anything like that. Not maybe not for lack of support, but just lack of funding and those
Sure.
kinds of things. So she had to pay a lot out of pocket. And so I remember my senior year, there was 3 of us, but we were still called the Quad Squad because we were the only ones that had played all 4 years.
Wow. Awesome. So can you talk about your high school experience and what did you enjoy most about it?
High school, I was everywhere. And I think that was kind of the initial part of me that is now where Tina has so many different kinds of people in her life.
Mm-hmm.
Because on like any given day, I'd be hanging out with, the band people because I liked music, even though I wasn't in band. And then I'd hang out with my skater, hacky sack playing people. My high school boyfriend was in ROTC, so of course I'd go hang out with the pickles in the ROTC room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then of course my tennis team, academic decathlon. So Tina was everywhere. Tina was never like I wasn't that student that was like, oh, if you're looking for Tina, you find her here. You
Mm-hmm.
had to figure it out to find me because I was never in the same twice usually. And I think it stemmed from one saying that my mom always told me was, Mija, you can have any kind of friend you want. You just don't have to pick up their habits. And so again, I had friends that did marijuana in high school, but I've never tried it to this day. And,
Yeah, yeah.
just those kinds of things. And again, some of them were even also nerds, and we were both on the academic decathlon team. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it was just that kind of support from my mom to not judge people, I think
Mm-hmm.
also was instilled in me that I never judged people for who they are or where they came from. I was just more like, hey, if we can vibe and you're cool, then let's hang out. And that was kind of my personality. And so I kind of just dabbled a little bit in everything just to whether it was an invite from a different friend or an invite from a teacher. Again, I got into academic decathlon because of a teacher. And then I made my friends from there. And then same thing with tennis. The teacher invited me, made my tennis friends. Band, well, I took a piano class. So we all had the same teacher that was in band was the piano instructor. So, it just kind of serendipitously worked out. But it was just, Tina likes a little bit of everything. Like I'm not really one
Absolutely.
for consistency.
Sure, absolutely. Can you talk about when the conversation for college began for you? When is it that you started talking about college and that from your desire to really talk about it?
I don't think it happened until senior year. Like again, my family instilled in me, like, hey, if you want to be a doctor, you're gonna have to, because again, Tina wanted to be a doctor. I was gonna be a
Mm-hmm.
pediatrician when I was in high school. And so they were like, just get good grades. That's all you need to focus
Sure,
on,
sure.
getting good grades. But it wasn't until my senior year where my recruiter for South Mount Community College pulled me out of class and was like, hey, we noticed your grades. Here's what South Mountain can offer you, just like any typical recruiter for any institution.
Sure.
But the reason I ended up really talking to him the most and talking about college the most and ended up picking South Mountain Community College despite being in the top 5% of my class, where I had a full ride to all 3 state institutions, was
Mm-hmm.
because he was the one who, again, came from my neighborhood. So he was Mexican American. He looked like me, sounded like me, was from the same barrio as me. But the key thing that he said, he's like, Tina, you have the grades to go to college. I want you to go to college. So even if you don't pick South Mountain, if you want to go to Arizona State, I will help you apply for Arizona State. If you want to go to University of Arizona, I will help you apply for University of Arizona. He just knew that I
Mm-hmm.
was a Mexican American student in high school, getting good grades, knew I had potential for higher ed, and was willing to help me regardless. Like, yes, he obviously wanted me to pick his institution, but at the end of the day, I think it was more about his community and he wanted me to be successful. And I'm
That's
not saying
awesome.
that was the best reason to pick South Mountain Community College, because my logic was, well, if he's that way, everybody there must be that way. And for the most
Sure.
part, they are, but you have bad apples wherever you go. But that was my logic as a high school senior. I was like, oh, well, if this recruiter acts this way, then the whole institution is probably gonna have that same culture, I guess you could say. And so that's why I picked South Mountain. But it came, I think, late in the game for me. Like actually deciding,
Wow.
like I didn't know you had to do research and figure out which college offered you the most money. Like I had like when these packets
Mm-hmm.
started coming home about financial aid packages. I didn't know what it meant. Again, a first generation low income student. I don't know what financial aid means. And I'm looking at my mom. She only kind of sort of remembers because that was when she was 19. At that time, my mom's now 50 years old, so she can't relate. And my sisters didn't go to college at all, so at that time, so I was the one figuring it out for the whole family. And so when Christopher came back to South Mountain High School after we had that discussion, I brought him the packets. I was like, well, this is what they're saying. What do I do? And again, he was a great mentor and recruiter for that institution. He's no longer there. But he was a fantastic person for that institution, I think, and key to at least part of my success, because if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't even thought to go, because in my mind, I thought I had to go to like straight to medical school. I was like, I don't go to college, I go to med school, not knowing that you still need to get your bachelor's degree, And so, I ended up picking South Mountain Community College, and then I am eternally grateful because despite all her A's and B's, Tina bombed her first year of community college. So,
yeah.
And
so can you talk a little bit about that? That must have felt like a setback.
Oh, it was huge. Oh, the imposter syndrome was through the roof at that point. Like I was like, it's not meant for me. Like I failed. And again, Tina doesn't fail. And now I feel like I failed my family. And now I don't know what I'm going to do. And again, for being a community college, I think it was the best place to happen versus at some bigger institution like any of the 3 state institutions. And nothing against them. Just when you're that big, like Arizona State, there are so many people that care about the student population there. There's just so many. It's hard to make those connections unless a student reaches out first. And so at the community college, I think the benefit that I had was I didn't have to reach out first. Somebody noticed and was like, hey, what are you doing? Like, come here, let's help you get on track. And so it was actually due to my student life and leadership director, Mr. Buddy Cheeks, and he got me into student government because that was the one thing I was adamant about doing in college because I didn't get to do it in high school, being, academic decathlon and tennis player and all those other things. I never got to be part of Stugo. And I was like, I want to do that in college. And so they got me involved in that. And when I failed my whole first year, Buddy was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go apply to this job. It's called Federal Work Study, and you're going to work for the athletics department. He took me over. He introduced me to the athletic director and was like, hey, you said you were looking for a student worker. Here she is. And I was like, okay, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Tina. And he was like, okay, well, go talk to my administrative assistant. She'll get you worked out, blah, blah, blah. Got me a job on campus. So got me my first Federal Work Study. Then he took me from there. He took me to Professor Collins, my communications professor, because he noticed I did pass her course. So he's like, Professor Collins, she needs a mentor. Would you mind being her mentor? Because she passed your class, so she obviously has a connection with you. So on and so forth. As I'm like not there, he's talking to her like I'm not standing right there. And so she's like, no, absolutely, I adore Tina. And yes, she can be a TA. She can help me with grading and setting up my blackboards and blah, blah, blah. And so I technically had 2 Federal Work Study jobs. And then that's when he introduced me to Trio. That was my first introduction to Trio when I got on SAP. And he was like, there's this program. It helps students just like you who are first generation, low income, and or have a disability. I was like, I don't have a disability. And he was like, that's fine. You can still be in the program. And he's like, and they're going to set you up with tutoring and mentoring and all that jazz. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So somebody else helped me. And then Christopher, who again was my recruiter, ended up finding out that Tina was on SAP, academic probation. And he was like, Tina, what's going on? Like, this isn't you. Like, in high school, you were top 5% of your class. What's going on? So he did check. He's like, okay, I want weekly or bi-weekly check-ins with you. So like all of a sudden, Tina went from 1, not going to class to 2, being so busy. Like she better go to class. If not, I have like 10 people that are going to find me.
Accountability.
Right, accountability, exactly. Now, granted, I think at the end of the day, I had a valid reason. So unfortunately, my high school sweetheart ended up turning into a domestic violence situation. So I found myself going to court versus class. But because of the way my high school kind of, I guess, introduced me to college, which was because they were thinking Arizona State or U of A, we always got taught like I remember many teachers saying, like, if you don't ask for help, you're just a number. In college, you don't matter. You just either better get good grades or figure it out. Like you're on your own. You're an adult. You have to. So again, when I failed, I was like, okay, well then nobody cares. Who's going to care about Tina? I just have to figure it out on my own. And so from there, it just went to like, okay, I don't belong here. And then all of a sudden, due to one person, I now had this village of people surrounding me with love and care and holding me accountable and telling me every day, like, yes, you still belong here. And so it took me 3 years to get a 2-year degree. Yeah. So I was community college.
But I mean, that's now, yeah. And that's becoming typical now, right? But because students are realizing that this format, and not to trash universities, because
Right.
universities have this 4-year model that they want students to graduate, or even community college, where they say 2 years. But I'm realizing like there's a growing population of students that really want to customize their degree. And if an associate's takes 3 or 4 years, it takes 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years, yeah.
If a bachelor's takes 5 to 6, it takes 5 to 6. And if a master's,
Yep,
it
and
takes
that's
longer.
what I tell my students now, being a director. I'm like, listen, your director is a 2.76 GPA and now manages a $1.5 million grant. Like, there is life after a GPA. Now, granted, if you can do better than me, absolutely, because it would have made my life easier.
Push them ahead.
Always do better.
Always, absolutely.
But if you can't, or if it's not feasible due to all these extra things called life, there is life after your GPA. Like,
absolutely,
you just have to get the degree. So, I don't know if this is part of your question. So if you want me to wait, I could talk to you about my transfer experience.
Actually, yes, we'll get that. We'll get to that here in just a second. So I really wanted to kind of consolidate some questions. That way you can kind of give us a story about this. So who was the first people that you talked to about your college goal, and how did they receive that news that you wanted to go to college?
Like really in depth, again, I think that would give that back to Christopher, or the SMCC recruiter, because again, he was the only person I knew from a college that I could talk to about. Again, my high school teachers, they were definitely under the, well, you're from the South Side, you're probably not going to get a degree. And if you do, it's only going to be an associate. So you better just make sure you do what you need to do, because universities don't care about you. And that may have been their experience. I don't honestly know. I don't know where that stems from, that kind of mentality. I'm glad I didn't let it change me to think the same way. I did kind of learn it the hard way, again, with failing my first year of college and learning that, universities and colleges do care, the staff do care, your professors do care. It's just hard, again, now being on the opposite side of that desk, it's hard to make those connections if you don't know. And I didn't know, as long as I said something, somebody would help me. I thought I just had to kind of suffer in silence, so to speak. And so I didn't really have that conversation about I really wanted to go to college until I met Christopher. And he was like, no, you can go to community college. He talked to me more on the financial side. Like, it makes sense for you to just go to the community college to take your English, math, science for this cheaper rate than paying for that same English, math, science at Arizona State or U of A, whichever one you want to go to. At that time, I was a U of A fan. That's probably the only time I'm going to admit it. Now I do bleed Marine Gold, and I'm all about those Sun Devils. Okay.
Got you. Okay. No.
I tell people I didn't know any better. So I was a U of A fan at the time. And so I talked to him about their medical program. And at the time, I would say it probably did have a better program, but that rivalry is real. So I'm all for Arizona State's medical program now. But no, U of A has always been known for its medical school and, nursing programs and those kinds of things. And so at the time, I was like, well, I want to go to U of A, things like that. And he's like, okay, well, we can help you get there. But financially, do you think your family's ready to support you at a big university? Because you're going to have to take out what's called a student loan, and you may need what's called a Parent Plus loan, and those kind of like, no, there is no way, any way, shape, or form that my family can support that kind of money. And so that's when he started breaking down those financial aid packages for me. And that's when he was like, Tina, due to your GPA, you're going to get a full ride at South Mountain Community College. And you're not going to pay anything. And if anything, you're probably going to get a refund, And I was like, what's a refund? And he's like, it's a check. They're going to pay you to go to school. And I was like, they're going to pay me to go to school? He's like, yes. When you like, what you do with that check is up to you. But if you use it wisely, you get technically your books and your school supplies technically for free if you use the refund for those things. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I think that was my initial conversation wasn't until senior year. I'm already supposed to know where I'm supposed to go, and Tina had no idea. And this one recruiter, again, I couldn't tell you why. I wish I could have asked him and be like, well, why did you take the time to do that with me? And I'm sure I wasn't the only one, but what my best guesstimate was is he knew that there was a bigger purpose in helping his people from his community, whether that meant they attended his institution or not. And I think for the most part, I think it did benefit South Mountain, because I think because of that connection that you could make with him, a lot of us from South Phoenix ended up choosing South Mountain Community College because that's our college. That's the one for now. I learned that being a student ambassador and stuff, and the battles that South Mountain Community College had to go through in order to even become accredited and things like that for being on the south side of Phoenix, which is the bad side. That college has a lot of rich history in making sure that underrepresented populations had an opportunity for higher education.
Absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about your final year in high school and what was that experience like for you?
Overwhelming, for sure. So between the high school sweetheart going into Arizona State, so he was going to go straight into the university, I picked a community college. So, you know, the high school love of being apart and all those things was
Sure.
Family was a little stressed out initially because they're like, okay, they're promising all you these things. Are you actually going to get it? And I think there was an issue with my financial aid package in the beginning, but of course I called Christopher. He helped me fix it and so on and so forth. I graduated with honors and all distinctions and all those kinds of things. But I think the stress of knowing that I would be going to college and that kind of reality was kicking in of Tina's an adult and now it's all on me. Because again, at that time, I was getting told, you know, you either make it or you don't. So that means you're either worthy of going or you're not worthy of going. So at least in the beginning, I thought I was worried. But again, after I failed that first academic year, it was definitely the imposter syndrome started kicking in. But it was very stressful in the sense that I didn't want to be a burden to my family just because of my hopes and my dreams, meaning I didn't want to put my mom and dad trying to get a second job or anything so that I could afford, you know, a meal plan or something like that. So, I mean, in high school, I was already working. I worked sophomore through senior year at our Safeway, which is like a Kroger or something like that, Bash's'. And so I was a cashier, and so I helped pay bills and stuff. But then at the end of the day, again, I was just worried, like, am I going to really be able to afford this? So beg your pardon. Senior year became so stressful to the point where, you know, at the time I didn't know what they were, but panic attacks and things like that, because Tina was like, again, I just didn't want to be a burden. I knew my parents had done enough. And I had seen that my sisters were doing relatively well without having a college degree. So I did, I guess you could say, kind of question it for a little bit. Like, why do I need a degree if everybody else didn't get one? Well, why is it on me? But at the end of the day, with, you know, liking education, and my mom was like, no, Mia, you should go, like, at least try. My mom always usually encourages me to try something. And she's like, and then if you don't like it, you don't like it, but you can say you tried, because the what if is going to eat at you. And which is true. That always eats at me. I don't like what ifs. And so she was like, just try it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to continue. And so then when I failed my first year, I was like, okay, Tina doesn't like it. But then I had, again, those people at the college holding me accountable as in, you may not like it, but you kind of did it wrong. So let's teach you to do it the right way. And then if you don't like it, you can quit. And at least that's what they said, although I really don't think they would have let me quit anyway.
So true.
But so with learning to use my resources better helped me kind of really gain the confidence to say that I do belong here and that I do have a voice and that it matters and that I am worthy of being at this institution. So.
Awesome. Can you talk about what your high school graduation meant to you and to your family?
Oh, it was huge. It was a big accomplishment. I mean, it wasn't as grand because, I mean, my sisters had graduated high school as well. So I think that was just the obvious step. But what was grand, what made it grand was the fact that they knew I would be continuing. So that's what made me a little different. And so, yes, I picked a community college. But again, I think at the end of the day, my parents felt a little bit more safe with that, because then that meant Tina gets to stay home. She didn't have to go live in at the time we called them dorms. Now we call them res halls. So she didn't have to go live in the res hall or anything like that. So they could kind of keep an eye on me while still going to college. And so it ended up being, like I said, a blessing in disguise. But no, overall high school, I mean, we had a big old party, lasted like a day and a half and everything. So,
very good.
Accomplishment, because of course I obviously graduated with honors and stuff. My sisters didn't. I'm just putting that out there. Or at least some of them. Some did and some didn't. There's like 2 of us that are nerds, and we're split down the middle, and 2 of us that are not. And so it was a huge accomplishment. Very proud of my high school degree. Although again, if I could have learned what I learned now about grades and GPAs and not put so much stress on myself, I think I would have done it that way. So
yeah. So talk about that first stop you did at South Mountain Community College in Phoenix. Talk about that community college experience. Was it everything you expected, or when you set foot to campus, did it feel some familiarity to high school? Talk about that experience.
Well, I think it resonated with me well because I did a summer bridge program through student government. So Buddy required us to be on campus over the summer, and then we did a student leadership conference. So that way we could all get to know each other and then start learning from other institutions and people and students and things like that. So once I stepped on campus for South Mountain, I had already kind of learned the building. So I wasn't that typical, like, I don't know where to go freshman or anything like that. I was very familiar with the campus. Plus it was local. So while I never initially beforehand had stepped foot on campus, again, it was in the south side of Phoenix. I passed by it every day in some way, shape, or form, going somewhere to get someplace. And so it always kind of felt like home. And again, at the time, it was so small that, again, you can make those connections and things. So while I didn't really have big expectations because I didn't know what to expect as a first gen, I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just here and somebody better tell me what to do. So, but again, being in that leadership cohort over the summer, I think helped. So,
yeah. And is that where you found out about TRIO? Was at South Mountain Community College?
Yeah, that's where I found out about TRIO was at South. So after I failed my first academic year, then I went to, again, he took me to athletics department, communications department, and then he took me to TRIO. And so my TRIO advisor, he and the TRIO director, they're both still in my life to this day. And they were making sure that Tina was on track, that Tina was graduating. Like, they walked me through what's called SAP, which is our academic probation contract, and what that really meant. And so they kind of broke it down for me so it was more understandable and student friendly. Because I think at the time the verbiage was very, again, all that higher ed terminology and things like that I didn't understand.
It can get confusing,
so, yeah. So all these acronyms, I don't know what SAP means.
The alphabet soup that is university sometimes.
Exactly. And so, and it was actually through TRIO, like I went through to my first play, like musical play, theater play,
awesome.
and those kinds of things. So like a traditional TRIO SSS student. But yeah, so that first year I didn't have any expectations, because again, I was just too scared to set them, because I didn't want to set myself up for failure. And then when I did fail, I really didn't know what to do. So all I did was I started just doing as I was told, because I was like, okay, you guys are paid to be here for a reason. That was my logic. You're paid to be here for a reason, so I guess I should listen to you. You got the fancy badge. You got the plastic badge. You sit behind some fancy desk. You must know what you're doing.
So now that role is reversed for you, now that you're on the other end of the desk.
Yes, it is. And that's why I don't wear my badge a lot of the times. And
Gotcha.
I have my degrees posted, but you have to look for them. Because I've found that students find it intimidating. So I try not to, even though I am proud of them. I will always be proud of my degrees. Because again, education, like we always say, it's nothing that anybody can take away from me. But knowing what the population that I serve, it is intimidating to walk into a director's office and seeing the big desk and those kinds of things. So I'm very glad to. Another good thing that I do like about USI is they do allow casual Fridays as long as you're in school spirit. And so I like it when I'm in my jeans and my USI t-shirt, because that makes me a little bit more human to my students versus some, you know, suit that I probably got at Ross on the clearance section, but they don't know that.
They don't have to know that. Absolutely.
So she must be balling and she has her life together.
So my next question to you, because now here you are in South Mountain Community College, getting your experience, working toward your associates. Once you've obtained your associates, were you at that point already zeroing in at a university that you wanted to continue your education, or were there discussions still happening?
Oh no, Trio definitely helped me figure it out, because I didn't know. Because again, I was so scared to fail again. And then fun fact, I did fail again. So I failed college twice. So the only reason I picked Arizona State over University of Arizona was at that time, ASU had a Trio program and U of A did not.
I was going to say, Trio does exist at ASU, right?
Oh yeah, it's existed there for a long time. Trio at U of A has been on and off with their grants. And so at that time, I changed my major. So me, math, and science, we figured out me, math, and science don't get along. Went from pre-med to nursing, and Tina just was getting her associates of arts and getting out of there. So at that time, I had a discussion with my Trio advisor, and because Tina's nosy and likes talking, we thought journalism might be good for Tina.
That sounds like it would be a good fit.
So, and it was not. So I busted my butt, got my associate's degree, and got into the prestigious Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State. And I transferred. I was on the wait list for Trio because over the summer, when they wanted all my documentations to be in the Trio program, like my income verification and stuff like that, I went home to Mexico. So I didn't meet the deadline.
Oh, dang.
So I ended up on their wait list. Well, Tina got into Walter Cronkite. Didn't like Walter Cronkite, so then failed a lot of her courses.
Oh no.
Ended up on SAP again. So that's how the dean of the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism was like, you need this program called Trio. And I was like, hey, I know them, but I'm on the wait list. And that's when I learned sometimes it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So she was like, oh, no, you're not going to be on the wait list anymore. And she made a call. The next day I had my Trio interview, had to do the paperwork, all that jazz, and got into Trio.
So you were two Trio families then, right? You were Trio South Mountain and Trio ASU. Wow.
Yep. And then my Trio folks at Arizona State, Davi was my Trio coordinator, and Ralph Guzman was my Trio director. And I still talk to Ralph to this day because now I have Trio director questions. But no, they were great. And again, ASU Trio program took me in. We're like, hey, we have a computer lab. You come here, you do your homework here, you study here. We have tutors here. Like, this is your one-stop shop. And I use that quote to this day, even for my Trio students. And that's what I did. I finally found my people, talked to Davi. I changed from journalism. So that was 1, 2, 3. So then my final degree, it is now my 6th year. And I'm getting that nasty letter from financial aid, like, hey, if you don't graduate, we're not providing financial aid and all that jazz. So I'm crying on that side of the desk as a student to Davi, my Trio coordinator, like, I don't know what to do because I don't like my major, so on and so forth. And he was like, okay, ASU has this thing called interdisciplinary studies. I was like, okay, that sounds fancy. He goes, basically, you take 2 minors, make them into a major. I was like, cool. Which minors do I pick? And he showed me this list. And he's like, okay, you're going to go talk to this academic advisor. You're going to tell them this specifically, that you're changing your major and you need to graduate by this time, because then you'll probably be in 15 credit hours each semester. And for the longest, I had only been in 12 credit hours. So I was like, ooh, 15 credit hours. Okay, if you say so. He's like, because you're going to come to Trio. You're going to use our tutoring hours. You're going to use our computer lab. You're going to be fine. And I was like, if you say so. So I did as I was told, changed my major, Loved it because I got to pick courses. Again, my biggest influential people were my communications professor from South Mountain Community College and my student life and leadership director from South Mountain Community College for student government. And so I was like, because at that time I was thinking I was going to be a student life and leadership director, which is still in the plans, but I just haven't made it that far yet. And so that was my goal at the time, to be a student life and leadership director. So it allowed me to kind of touch base with familiarity of home, which was South Mountain. And then I graduated. So, but yeah, I was definitely that TRIO student. And even though I excelled my senior year, again, ended up graduating with a 2.76 GPA. So it was a struggle, but I am so proud of that 2.7, more than I am my master's degree with my 4.0, because the amount of work and grit that it took me, failing twice, you know, and not letting that imposter syndrome overtake me and things like that, that I knew that 2.7 GPA was the best of the best that they could get out of me, and that I worked really hard because I was working full time by the time I transferred to Arizona State. I worked full time. I worked in construction staffing. So I was going to work from like 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then going to class from like 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., doing homework until like 11, and then getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep and then going right back to work. So it was a struggle, to say the least. And so as much as I wanted to be as dedicated in that TRIO program at Arizona State, I was involved and I did the activities, but I wasn't as involved as I was at the South Mountain Community College, because again, even though I was traditional age, I was post-traditional student because I had to work. At that point, Tina had her own apartment. At that time, that was with the first husband. And so I wasn't going to be like, all right, honey, I love you, but I'll see you and I'm going to go back to my dorm, you know? So we lived together and those kinds of things. So I was technically a post-traditional student, and the struggle of making sure that I went to class and everything was real, because at the end of the day, I have realities, you know, adulthood, definitely intercepting that with, you know, making rent, paying electric, paying internet, so I can do my assignments, you know. Luckily, TRIO helped in many other ways. Like, again, that free printing, man, that came in so much handy.
For sure.
For everything, like personal, professional, academic, we used it for everything, you know, tax season, printing W-2s. You don't think that, you know, printing all those things adds up, but I've seen students' accounts before they enter TRIO and they already had like $100+ and they didn't know how they were going to pay it because their financial aid didn't cover it. And so me having that as a TRIO student was a huge benefit. Not having to buy a graphing calculator for the last year of math that Tina had to do. Having that private tutoring session helped, you know, and all those things. And so, but I definitely had to make the time because the time wasn't there. And I think that is a testament to my grit and determination that I didn't care how long it was going to take. But again, I was going to get that degree. And I think that was also being pushed by my family. Again, my dad, just easier to pick up a pencil instead of a shovel. I mean, hi, you got to keep going. I know you're tired. I know you want to take a break. And I did for a couple of semesters. But at the end of the day, he was like, you're going to get it. And I was like, I know, Dad, I promise I'm going to get it. And yeah, it took me 6 years to get my 4-year degree because of my transfer experience.
Yeah. Talk about that moment that you graduated from ASU. What did that mean for you, and what did that mean for your family?
That was a bigger party, I'll tell you that.
Was that one the 2 to 3 day party?
Oh yeah, we definitely jumped all weekend, and family coming from out of state, and you know, my cousins coming in and all that stuff. And no, it was an exceptional party, but at the same time, I was so proud because I thought I was done.
You thought you were done, finished.
Second to last meeting before the semester ends, you know, Davi's talking to me about graduate school, and I was like, Tina's done. Tina's done. But at that time, Tina was like, no, Tina's done. Tina's graduating, you know, blah, blah, blah. But no, when I walked across that stage and I heard my name, and to hear, and again, I don't know how I knew it was important, but I knew it was important to hear a Mexican-American name, to hear Munoz, Celestina Munoz, Bachelor's of Interdisciplinary Studies from Arizona State University, and to hear my family cheering for me. Probably, I mean, it felt like they were the loudest. It was also a little embarrassing, but you know, it's at Wells Fargo Arena. And then at ASU, we have specific graduations for different ethnicities and cultures. So we have Hispanic convocation for just your Latinx community. and to have the mariachis there playing and to see more people who look like me, sound like me, come from similar backgrounds as me, and to see that stadium full of people that are brown represented, and we get a stole that looks like a Mexican blanket, a sarape, and that stole to this day is like my biggest accomplishment.
That's awesome. So you also, as you were referring to earlier, you went to and got into a master's program. Can you talk about that experience? Because you were sharing earlier, you thought you were done. You thought you were finished. But what influenced you to pursue your master's?
Well, in that last session of my trio advising session, you know, we always talk about career readiness and stuff. And so he's like, all right, Tina, you're getting your degree. What's next? What do you want to do? Where are you applying? I needed an internship for my bachelor's degree. And so I did my internship through Trio because, again, I was like, I don't know where to go. I already have my job that pays my bills. I don't have anywhere else to go. Like, I don't know how to basically have 2 jobs and classes. So my Trio advisor was just like, you're going to do it here. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was an option. He's like, yeah, you just do it here. I was like, okay, well, who do I have to ask? And he's like, me. And I'm telling you, you're going to do it here. I was like, okay. Of course, he had to bring it up to the Ralph was obviously accepted it, and he trusted Davi a lot, and so I did it there. And so when I came to my final meeting, I was like, I want to do what you do, because I realized I had that aha moment where, because he asked me a very specific question, which was, during your academic journey, when were you the most happy? And I could pinpoint it to times where I was either giving tours to families or encouraging high school students to go to college and those kinds of moments. And so I made sure that I was like, I want to do what you do. I want to work with students and make sure that they know that they can come to college like I did. And he was like, okay, well then to be a trio advisor, you need a master's degree. I was like, come again?
So
So I was like, okay. So then he was like, okay, well, here's the application process. Here's the different schools you can apply to, but ASU has a program. And if you work for Arizona State, you get your tuition waived. And again, we always talk about costs and financial literacy. So he's like, just so you know, the TRIO program at ASU West campus is looking for an admin. Wink, wink. And I was like, good to know.
putting the seeds in there. I like that.
Yep, exactly. So obviously applied for the job, got the job as administrative assistant with TRIO. And then that's what helped me get through graduate school. But I initially didn't even want to apply because in big bold letters, bullet point number one is 3.0 GPA. And again, Tina graduated 2.76. So I was like, Davi, I don't even meet the first bullet point. I don't meet the first criteria. Why would I go to graduate school? He's like, not every program, but at least here at Arizona State, we do accept students on probation, meaning as long as you pass your first semester, you can stay in the graduate program. He's like, now, if you choose to go somewhere else, I can't promise that to you, but I know here at ASU we do. Now, granted, I didn't know at the time he had just graduated from that same program. So he knew a lot of the professors. He knew all the recruitment people. Now, whether or not he pulled strings, I have no idea. He led me to believe I earned it on my own merit. So that's the story I'm going to stick to. But if he did, I'm totally appreciative of it. But yeah, I got in on probation, passed my first academic semester with all A's, and then I was allowed to stay in the program. But I initially had that, again, imposter phenomenon even in the beginning, because again, big bold letters, bullet point number 1 through, I was like, I don't even meet the first bullet point. Why would I apply? So, but again, through that encouragement and believing in me that my trio coordinator instilled in me, is why I applied. But I did wait till like 11:50 to hit the submit button.
So then you were working on a degree while you were working.
Yes.
Wow. You must have had a very busy schedule.
Busy schedule and no life. And again, if I could redo it, I would do it so many different ways. I envy sometimes my students who are able to stay on campus and just live their best college experience. But I mean, literally, it got to the point where if you didn't book me in advance, like I had to learn, again, for a Mexican American, I think it was hard for me to learn to say no. Like no to going to my cousin's quinceañera, no to, hanging out with the family after a certain time, like mom, I have to leave. I have to go back to my apartment. I have to do homework. I have to go do this,
Oh gosh,
or even
yeah.
explain sometimes with trio programs, like sometimes it's just fun things, but they're important fun things like going to a play. Like I remember
Sure.
at one point, I don't remember the specific thing that I had to do with my family. But I remember arguing with one of my sisters because she's like, no, family first. And I was like, well, I committed to this trio event. I have to go. It costs them money. And
Sure,
so I'm going to
sure.
go. And they're like, it's just a play and it was going to be free anyway. They're probably going to be fine. And I was just very adamant that no, I'm going to stick to my word. I said I was going to do it. So I'm going to do it. And so just learning, like, I think a lot of students nowadays, whether Latinx or not, struggle with that when you're first gen low income and you're staying at home, having that family responsibility while balancing possibly working, while balancing also being a student is a lot of work. And I think that's a point where I sometimes butt heads with faculty because, they're still under the old school way of, you just take out your student loans, you live on campus and you go to class and that's all you have to
Right.
worry about.
That's all you have to be committed
That
to.
is not a traditional student anymore. I think a traditional
Mhm.
student, it looks a lot more like me where they're working, they're having one or two jobs, they are supporting their families and they have a lot of extra things. So being lenient or empathetic enough to be like, okay, maybe I can't give you full credit, but I will at least grant you, a 2-day extension, I think would go a long way. And I think students would be more reciprocal and doing well in class if they knew that their teacher valued the other side of that coin that is a part of them. Yes, they're a student, but they're also a daughter, they're also a worker, they're also an aunt, they're also again a friend, a colleague. Like there are other hats that we all wear. Student isn't
For
the only
sure.
one anymore.
Absolutely.
And so yeah.
Thank you.
It's become
Thank you
a
so much.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So I'm gonna cut through kind of some of the we know family's very proud when you graduate. We know that your supporters are very proud. They absolutely feel like this they celebrate with you, right? But I'm gonna cut through that noise and I'm gonna say, what did obtaining this master's degree mean for you personally? Just you, just Tina. What did it
Yeah.
mean for you?
I think for me, it kind of revalidated that I belonged because as much as I'm proud of that 2.7 and that bachelor's degree, I feel like my redemption degree was my master's because it proved to me
Wow.
that I could do it, that I knew what I knew, and that I could apply it in real life, and that I could. And then what I researched, which was transfer student orientations and the importance of them. Because as a transfer student, again, at Arizona State, for me, it was like being a freshman all over again. Like, yeah,
Oh,
I
sure.
may know that I need to visit financial aid, but I don't know where it is. I may know that, I need to visit office hours, but I don't even know who my professors are yet. Like, there has been no
Yeah.
introduction to this university. You're just expected to thrive because you're a junior. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, this is my first day on campus. I don't know where to go, who to see, who to talk to, who not to talk to, and all those things. So that's what incited my research project. And I ended up validating that, orientations are important even for transfers. It may look different.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may not need a academic advisor session because they know how to get classes and things like that, but they need to know and hear from certain departments like if you have a multicultural center or the financial aid department and those kinds of
Oh,
things.
yeah.
And so what my master's means to me is that Tina has a voice and that it belongs at the table.
Absolutely. 100%. You currently serve as the director for Trio Student Support Services programs at the University of Southern Indiana. What does this position mean to you?
Oh, this was the dream job. Like now I have to figure out a new one. So no, like it really was my goal. After I decided to work for Trio as the administrative assistant while I was getting my master's degree, I ended up being promoted to a coordinator before getting my master's degree. It was my last semester, but they unfortunately had some high turnover, and my director at the time knew I wanted the job. So she was like, well, I don't want to post it. Wait till you graduate, because then we might find another candidate. So luckily she kind of advocated for me, like, hey, I know she doesn't have her degree yet, but we know she wants the job. She's alumni of the program. She's alumni, kind of did all my kudos where kudos needed to be said. With the people, it needed to be said too. And so, I mean, granted, yes, did I apply just like any other candidate? I had to do the interview. I had to do the presentation requirement, and just like any other candidate, yes, like I didn't just get it for free, but I did need help. And so like when I was applying to ASU's West Campus for the coordinator position, I went back to ASU downtown campus, which is where I was hosted as a trio participant. And I was like, Ralph, I have to do this interview. And they said it's all day and I don't know what to do. And so they did mock interviews. It was like being a trio student all over again. They did mock interviews with me. They taught me to say interacting with students, not dealing with students, and those kinds of things. And I ended up getting the job, obviously. And then I was a coordinator for 4 years, almost 5 at Arizona State. And it was very hard for me to leave my trio family. Very hard. Almost as hard. I mean, it was pretty neck and neck to my actual biological family to leave, because when you interact with trio students, it is just so much more than academic advising or financial or any other department on campus.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because we do so much more. We're the jack of all trades, masters of none, because we do counseling, even though we're not certified counselors. We do academic advising, even though we're not academic advisors. We do the parenting when parents don't step in, and all these other things. And so you don't get to just know the student and their ID and their major. Whether they have sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, whether they're having you can look at a student and tell whether they have a good day or a bad day just by looking at them and the way they walk, because we interact with them on such a personal level, which is why I do like my program, the fact that it's a smaller cohort. We only serve 140 versus ASU was like almost 200 plus. Because at my level, even as a director, I'm allowed to really get to know my participants. And so they are not just, some John Doe with a student ID for annual performance report. I know my students in and out, back and forth. And I don't think I would be able to do that as a director if I had a bigger program. Now, is the goal to get bigger? Yes. And that's only because at the end of the day, I think more bigger trio programs are needed to serve a wider population, because now I think of the students who don't get the opportunity to be in trio or who are on my wait list waiting to be a part of this family, because they're not getting the resources that they need now while they need them now, where I'm hoping they survive enough in time so that I can add them to our population once I have graduates. And so the goal will be to increase, but of course, with increasing more students, which means more responsibility, or more programs, which means I start to step away from the student population and go more into the administrative roles of budgets and finances and personnel and those kinds of things. And I'm not ready to give that up yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you've had quite the journey to get to this point. You were also a presenter for a trio program. I think that's how we connected, is I learned that you're a presenter. Briefly, talk about that experience. What was that like for you to be a presenter for other trio professionals?
Yeah, I ended up presenting for Indiana's Trios state conference. And I recently was also part of the Multicultural Center's conference for our underrepresented student population at USI. And so now as I'm going into these presenter modes, it's kind of a reflection part of me, because I just remember being that student being like, I want to be important enough one day that I'm on that side, like giving the presentation. And it actually happened to me at USI. I had a student and she was looking at her pamphlet and she's like, Tina, there you are. I was like, yep, that's me. You found me on the pamphlet. And she goes, I want to be on a pamphlet one day for a conference. And I remember instantaneously that memory came back to me of me saying that same thing. So it was a very nostalgic kind of full circle moment to see my name on that pamphlet, and then having that memory of saying, like, I want to be on a conference pamphlet one day. And for it to come to fruition, I think, and the journey that I've had again, I think it's just a testament to my grit and determination and being an underdog. Because again, I had people. I mean, as for every 1 to 2 supporters that I probably had 3 or 4 people telling me I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or just having the stereotypical, because I'm Mexican, that means I should be in the house, or that I would be pregnant by 15, or I'd be another statistic, and those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Those experiences also happened, but luckily, and I couldn't tell you why, but luckily enough, the voices of compassion and leadership and the people worthy of me hearing their voice and telling me that I could do it and believing in them that I could do it, I listened to, and they were louder than those of the negative comments. And I'm internally grateful for all the people that had to help me get here. And now I'm glad to be part of that for somebody else, both as a director and as a presenter, helping new directors, like a director from Purdue Northwest, and myself have now started our own little new directors cohort where we meet every first Friday, and we're just all kind of learning to be directors together. And we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly,
Sure.
comparing notes to getting different activities approved and how you got it approved and those kinds of things, and just learning to be in this leadership role because it is different. Like I didn't really, I've called Ralph and be like, dude, you made this look easy, and it is not an easy job.
False advertising.
Yes, false advertising. But to his point, he's like, Tina, you met me when I was your trio director. I was already like 10, 12 years in. You didn't meet Ralph as new director to trio years 1 through 5. And then of course that freaked me out. I'm like, it's going to take me 5 years to get to know this job. He's like, well, no, it probably won't take you that long knowing you. But, it takes a while. And the amount of advocacy that I didn't think that was needed for this job. I always thought like everybody would think trio is amazing. And of course you'd want to give us more space and, financial support and all these things. And it's not always there. Yeah. And USI has been kind. They could do better. Everybody can do better. Even ASU's program, even though it's been there for many, many years and been renewed several times over and helped so many students, even they have their battles with leadership, and I know not every institution, nobody has Oprah money to just, hand away and give away for no reason. Sure. So I'm sure there's a reason for not sometimes being the best supportive efforts for trio. However, I told my newest supervisor, he just started with USI like 4 months ago. It's like, if I get fired over student advocacy, I will sleep well at night. So
oh, that's very good. Like, I know that your students are in good hands with you, so that's amazing. What advice would you share with trio participants who are currently going in their college journey or pre-college journey?
I would say just don't give up. Everybody's path is different. I know in our minds and what we're told and what we're taught is that leadership and that money-oriented positions, like all the success, that's the word I'm looking for. Success is linear. Like it's somehow just one step in front of the other. Yeah. And the truth about success is it looks more like a toddler's drawing. If you can envision that, like circles and squares and just zigzags. And to get from point A to point B, it's a lot, and it's messy, and it's sometimes ugly, and it could be daunting. But there is light at the end of the tunnel as long as you persevere. Because if it wasn't for me persevering and really being determined to prove some of these people wrong, like proving to a high school math teacher that I'm not going to get pregnant at 15 and, be another Mexican statistic, then they would have won that battle, right? Sure. And I think, and to use your resources, reach out to somebody. Maybe the first person you talk to isn't going to be the person who helps you the most. It may be the second, third, fourth, or fifth. But I promise you, if you look hard enough, there is, whether it's a trio program, maybe your academic advisor, maybe even a favorite professor. There is somebody at that college or university who's willing to help you and guide you through this process, because we do this because we love doing it. Believe me, if you look at the salaries of most people in higher ed, it is not due to the money. We do it because it's a passion of ours and we want to see other people succeed. I have put plenty of students through college, even now as a professional staff, who make 10 times the amount of money I'll probably ever see as a trio director or even executive director. And I'm perfectly okay with that because I love coming to work every day. I love not knowing what's going to come through my doors, whether it's good news, bad news for my students, because at the end of the day, I know I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about this program, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. You know, as many headaches as I get from leadership sometimes, I'm grateful that at least they're willing to listen to me and that they'll give me an opportunity to speak my voice. And sometimes we're going to connect and everything's going to go well. And sometimes we're just going to have to agree to disagree. But Tina's going to keep knocking on those doors till, you know, I get my way, because at the end of the day, I'm doing it for my students. And so I would just advise them to find that one person that's going to help them through this.
Absolutely. What advice do you have for TRIO professionals?
That for every one student that's going to give you a thank you, you're going to have about 7 to 8 of them that are not. But it's not because they don't think of us and they're not grateful. It's just they have a lot going on. Mm-hmm. And so we're not always going to get the thank yous and the praises and the heartfelt letters and the invitations to graduation, but definitely take advantage. Let those students that do that for you refill your cup. But even for the students that are not adding to your cup, just know that you are probably still somebody that they're thinking about that got them through this process. They maybe just not had the courage to tell you. Because I've had a couple of alumni come back from Arizona State and, you know, reach out to me through LinkedIn and stuff. Students that I would have never thought would reach out to me because they weren't like one of my student workers or something. And they're like, Tina, I made it. I became a lawyer. Thank you for your letter of recommendation. And thank you for getting me through ASU and the process and so on and so forth. And again, this wasn't a student that I met with regularly or that I got, you know, that invitation to for their graduation or pictures or anything like that. These are just random students. I'm like I remember them, but it's just not somebody who I would have thought reached out to me. And so don't let, you know, that discourage you, because I think the students know that we care and they are appreciative. They just sometimes don't have the courage. So, you know, and to be good to yourselves. Student advocacy is a hard line of work and it can be draining. I've taken a break from higher ed before, actually. Side note, worked for John Deere for 1.5 years. Because higher ed just burned me out because I kept giving and giving and giving and nothing was replenishing. At some point, graduation isn't enough. And so to remember to be good to yourself, I learned that from Professor Collins, and it's a quote I tell my students all the time, because if I'm not replenishing my cup, then I can't help others. So, because if I honestly feel like if I don't do it, who is going to do it? Now, granted, do I know I'm replaceable and those kinds of things at the workplace? Absolutely. I know if something happened to me, well, I will be missed, or if I left, I would be missed, and so forth at the university. At the end of the day, that job posting is going to be there. So remember to replenish yourself, whether that's hiking, dancing, family time, you know, puzzles, whatever replenishes your cup, to make sure that you do that, because sometimes it's okay to say that graduation is not enough.
Absolutely. What are you currently listening to, reading, or watching?
Well, currently I am watching Chicago Fire due to the hubby.
Okay.
And he's kind of like, well, granted, I don't think there's ever well, I'd have to investigate that if there's ever like a series about education where I could point out the mistakes or that's definitely done for TV.
The closest one is Abbott Elementary is what I've heard.
Yeah, I would agree. So I probably have to start watching that one. But so we're watching Chicago Fire. I am currently reading Gen Z Goes to College, because I'm very interested in learning more about that. Like, it's dated. I mean, they've been going to college since that book came out, I think in like 2015. But for me, I feel like sometimes I just don't relate. So that's why I'm trying to figure out how to relate sometimes to my students.
Sure.
And so that book was recommended to me. So that's why I'm reading that. The other book I'm also reading is Finding Your Why by Simon Sinek. So I'm very interested in learning. I think I already found it. I just don't know how to put it in words. So hopefully that book will help me kind of put it more into focus. And then what was the other part of the question?
Listening.
Reading. Listening. Okay, so
Podcast
Tina's
music.
a millennial, if you haven't gathered that already by some of my answers. So it took me forever to give up Pandora. I am now officially part of Spotify, and so all my
Oh,
students
you
are
gave in.
yeah. My students honestly, I've been getting students to send me their playlist. Now, granted, I've made some of my own, all the 90s R&Bs and 2000s and stuff, Um, but I just probably 2 months ago gave in and finally joined Spotify. So I am learning Spotify as we speak.
Right on. Awesome.
I mean, my
Celestina,
Pandora, I've had it for so long. I mean, there was no need to skip most of the time. So I
for
liked
sure.
it.
Yeah. Could you describe yourself in one word? Just one word.
One word. Determined.
Determined. I love it. So we usually use the one word as the title of your episode. So when we publish, that'll be the title of your episode. Celestina, it's been a pleasure to interview you, to hear your trio journey, to hear your trajectory into being a trio professional as a director. I hope to have you on again soon. That would be great to just for
Yes,
you to
absolutely. I
share
would
your
love
story and
to.
your journey with us.
Love to be part of this, Juan. Thank you for reaching out again. Again, this is also kind of one of those imposter syndrome things. I was I would never thought I'd be somebody of interest for a podcast. So you're definitely helping a dream come true. And I appreciate the opportunity. Anytime you need me to be on, or if you ever need students or referrals for people within Indiana, definitely feel free to reach out. Would love to connect you with amazing folks within the trio family and students as well. And I look forward to hopefully talking to you again.
Absolutely. And I will take you up on that. We need more folks from that area to be on the podcast. I feel like I got a lot of Colorado, California, and some from other areas, but definitely need more from your area. Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, definitely introduce you to some Midwesterners that are awesome people.
Wonderful. We have a tradition on the Let's Talk Trio podcast where we have the guest sign off. Celestina, do you care to do the honors?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. I wish everybody who is listening a great, successful end of year, or if it's already 2025, a successful year with their grant renewals. I hope everybody is renewed and that we all get to be successful programs. And I wish you all the best with all the love and support, just like my trio family has given to me. And with that, I just bid you farewell and let you know that trio works.
Are you a participant, alum, or staff of a trio program? Do you want your program highlighted? You or your program could be featured in an upcoming episode of Let's Talk Trio. Get a hold of us by going to our Facebook page or Instagram and send us a direct message. Search for Let's Talk Trio. We want to get your story to the public.
That was our guest, Celestina Munoz-Bryant, Trio SSS Director at the University of Southern Indiana. Celestina, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing your trio story. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk Trio podcast or know a staff, advocate, participant, or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. A heartfelt thanks to our individual supporters, Angelica Vialpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jeff Nepute, Angelica Valdez, Rosario Riley, Felicia Rivera, Eric LaMaster, and Jaded Electronics. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, TrioJoblist.com, Nosotros Education Center, The Trio Store, powered by Proforma. Visit www.thetriostore.com, your source for trio graduation stoles. And StudentAccess. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can sponsor the Let's Talk Trio podcast in one of three ways. Become a monthly patron on Patreon. Our base level starts at $1 a month. Become a corporate sponsor by placing an ad on the podcast. Contact us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our business handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of the Let's Talk Trio podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk Trio podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castaneda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. Be sure to follow the Let's Talk Trio podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. This episode was recorded Thursday, October 10th, 2024. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.